The champagne glass trembled in Emma Sinclair's hand as she stood in the corner of the Metropolitan Art Gallery's grand ballroom. The crystal chandelier above cast dancing shadows across priceless paintings, but Emma barely noticed their beauty tonight. Her focus was entirely on avoiding one person, her boss Richard Hawthorne, who had been pursuing her relentlessly for months. Emma adjusted her simple black dress. Feeling underdressed among the sea of designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, as a junior art restorer, her salary barely covered rent in her tiny Brooklyn apartment, let alone the kind of wardrobe these charity events demanded. But tonight's auction featured a rare Renaissance painting that needed authentication, and Richard had insisted she attend. Richard's oily voice made her skin crawl as he approached from behind. "You look absolutely stunning tonight. Have I mentioned how much I admire your dedication to your work?" Richard Hawthorne was 45, married with 3 children, had a reputation for making life difficult for female employees who rejected his advances. Emma forced a polite smile while internally cringing at his closeness. "Thank you. Mr. Hawthorne, I should really get back to examining the Caravaggio piece for tomorrow's authentication." "Nonsense," Richard waved dismissively, moving closer until Emma could smell his expensive cologne mixed with alcohol. "Tonight is for networking, not work. Speaking of which, I've been thinking about that promotion we discussed. Perhaps we could continue our conversation over dinner this weekend." Emma's heart sank. This was the 3rd time this month Richard had tried to leverage her career advancement against personal favors. She desperately needed the promotion, not just for the money, but for the credibility it would bring to her work. Yet the thought of being alone with Richard made her stomach turn. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm actually seeing someone," Emma blurted out. The lie tumbling from her lips before she could stop it, Richard's eyebrows rose skeptically. "Really? You've never mentioned anyone special?" Emma felt heat creep up her neck. "It's still new. We're keeping things private for now." "How convenient." Richard's tone turned sharp. "And where is this mysterious boyfriend tonight?" Emma's mouth went dry. She glanced around the ballroom desperately, searching for an escape. Any escape. Her eyes landed on a tall figure across the room, and her breath caught. The man stood near a massive oil painting, but he commanded more attention than any artwork in the gallery. He was easily 6 feet tall with broad shoulders that filled out his perfectly tailored tuxedo. Dark hair was styled with just enough casual mess to look effortless, and when he turned slightly, Emma caught a glimpse of sharp cheekbones and intense blue eyes that seemed to see everything. "He's right there," Emma heard herself saying. Pointing toward the mysterious stranger, Richard followed her gaze, and his expression shifted from skepticism to something resembling fear. "You're dating Julian Blackwood?" Emma's heart stopped. Julian Blackwood. She knew that name. Everyone in New York knew that name. He was the billionaire CEO of Blackwood Industries, a man whose business empire spanned real estate, technology, and art acquisition. He was also rumored to be ruthless, powerful, and completely untouchable. "I didn't realize you knew Mr. Blackwood personally." Richard's voice had lost all its earlier confidence. Before Emma could backtrack, before she could explain that she'd made a terrible mistake, Julian Blackwood himself began walking toward them. His stride was confident, purposeful, like a predator who had spotted his prey. Emma felt simultaneously terrified and mesmerized as those piercing blue eyes locked onto hers. "Emma." Oh. Julian's voice was deep, smooth, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place. "I've been looking for you." Emma stared at him in shock. How did he know her name? More importantly, why was he playing along with her desperate lie? Julian moved to her side with fluid grace, his hand settling possessively on the small of her back. The touch sent electricity shooting through Emma's entire nervous system. Up close, he was even more intimidating, with the kind of presence that commanded attention from everyone in the room. "Julian," Emma managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper, "Darling." Julian's smile was warm, but there was something dangerous in his eyes when he looked at Richard. "I see you've met my girlfriend's boss." Richard's face had gone pale. "Mr. Blackwood? I had no idea. Emma never mentioned that you two were together. Emma's very private about our relationship." Julian's arm tightened around Emma's waist, pulling her closer against his side. "She prefers to keep her personal and professional lives separate. I respect that about her. The way Julian said her name, like he'd been saying it for years, made Emma's knees weak. She tried to process what was happening. Julian Blackwood, one of the most powerful men in America, was pretending to be her boyfriend. Why would he do such a thing? Of course, Richard stammered. I completely understand. Well, I should let you two get back to your evening, as Richard hurried away. Practically fleeing across the ballroom, Emma turned to face Julian. This close, she could see flecks of silver in his blue eyes and smell his cologne. Something expensive and masculine that made her want to step closer instead of backing away. Thank you, Emma said quietly. But I have to ask, why did you help me? And how do you know my name? Julian's smile was enigmatic. You looked like you needed rescuing. As for your name, I make it my business to know everyone who works with art in this city. Your restoration work on the Byzantine collection at the Morgan Library was impressive. Emma felt a flush of pride. Julian Blackwood knew her work. You follow art restoration? I collect art, which means I need the best people to maintain my collection. Your reputation precedes you, Miss Sinclair. They were interrupted by a woman in a stunning red dress approaching them. She was elegant, sophisticated, the kind of poise that spoke of old money and older bloodlines. Julian, the woman's voice was honey-sweet, but with an underlying edge. I didn't expect to see you here tonight. Julian's entire demeanor shifted, becoming cooler, more guarded. Vivian? I thought you were in Paris. I came back early. Business, you know. Vivian's calculating gaze moved to Emma, assessing her from head to toe in a way that made Emma feel like a specimen under a microscope. And who is this lovely creature? Emma Sinclair, Julian said, his arm still around Emma's waist. My girlfriend. Vivian's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose in surprise. Girlfriend. How delightfully unexpected. Julian usually prefers to keep his personal life separate from social events. Emma could feel the tension crackling between Julian and Vivian. There was history there, complicated and painful, from the way Julian's jaw tightened. People change. Julian said simply, Indeed they do. Vivian's smile was sharp as a blade. Well, it was lovely meeting you, Emma. I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of each other. As Vivian glided away, Emma turned to Julian. Ex-girlfriend. Ex-fiancé, Julian corrected, his voice flat. She decided my business partner offered better prospects. Emma winced at the pain she heard beneath his controlled tone. I'm sorry. That must have been difficult. Julian looked down at her, something shifting in his expression. It taught me valuable lessons about trust and loyalty. The orchestra began playing, and couples moved onto the dance floor. Julian extended his hand to Emma with old-world charm. Would you like to dance, Miss Sinclair? We should probably sell this charade convincingly. Emma hesitated. Dancing with Julian Blackwood would mean being in his arms, feeling his hands on her body, pretending an intimacy that didn't exist. It also meant continuing this dangerous lie that could explode in her face at any moment. But looking around the ballroom, she could see Richard watching them from across the room, along with several other people who seemed intensely interested in Julian's mysterious new girlfriend. I should probably warn you, Emma said as she took Julian's hand. I'm not very good at dancing. Julian led her onto the dance floor, his hand settling on her waist, while the other held hers gently. Then follow my lead. As they began to move together, Emma was surprised by how natural it felt. Julian was an excellent dancer, guiding her effortlessly through the steps while making her feel graceful and elegant. She found herself relaxing into his embrace, enjoying the solid warmth of his chest against her cheek. You're better at this than you think, Julian murmured near her ear, his breath sending shivers down her spine. You're just a good teacher, Emma replied, then immediately regretted how breathless she sounded. They danced in comfortable silence for several minutes, moving together like they'd been partners for years instead of strangers who'd met less than an hour ago. Emma became aware of other couples watching them, whispering behind their hands, clearly fascinated by Julian Blackwood's surprise appearance with an unknown woman. They're all staring at us, Emma whispered. They're staring at you, Julian corrected. Wondering who the beautiful woman is that managed to capture my attention? Emma felt heat creep up her neck at the compliment. This is crazy. What happens when people start asking questions? When they want to know details about our relationship, Julian spun her expertly, then pulled her back into his arms. Then we give them details. How long have we been dating? Where did we meet? What do we love about each other? The way he said love made Emma's heart skip several beats. You've thought about this. I've learned that the best lies are built on truth. We met tonight. We are attracted to each other. We both have reasons for wanting this arrangement to continue. Emma looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of deception. What reasons could you possibly have for pretending to date me? Julian's expression grew serious. The same reason you needed a fake boyfriend, I suspect. Sometimes it's easier to have someone in your life, even if it's not real, than to constantly fend off unwanted attention, as if to prove his point. Emma noticed several women around the edges of the dance floor watching Julian with obvious longing. Rich, beautiful women who probably had more in common with him than a struggling art restorer from Brooklyn ever would. How long would this arrangement last? Emma asked carefully. As long as it's mutually beneficial, Julian replied. I need someone respectable to accompany me to social events. You need protection from your boss and probably career advancement opportunities. We can help each other. Emma's mind raced. The practical part of her brain was screaming that this was insane, that she couldn't possibly fake a relationship with one of the most powerful men in New York. But another part of her, the part that was tired of being overlooked and dismissed, was intrigued by the possibilities. What would this arrangement involve exactly? Julian's hand tightened on her waist. Public appearances, charity events, business dinners. We'd need to look comfortable together, like we're genuinely involved, and privately. Privately, we maintain separate lives. This is strictly business. Emma, don't mistake it for anything else. The warning in his voice was clear, but Emma found herself disappointed by his emphasis on keeping things strictly professional. Dancing with Julian, feeling protected, and desired for the first time in months, had awakened something in her that she'd thought was safely buried. As the song ended, Julian led her off the dance floor. Several people approached them immediately, clearly hoping for introductions. But Julian handled them with practiced ease, introducing Emma as his girlfriend. While keeping the conversation's surface-level, Emma watched him work the room. Charming donors and impressing board members with his knowledge of art and culture. He was completely in his element, confident and commanding. Yet he never left her side or made her feel excluded from conversations. When they finally stepped outside the gallery into the cool night air, Emma felt like she could breathe again. That was overwhelming, she admitted. Julian loosened his bow tie, looking more human and less intimidating in the dim streetlight. You handled it perfectly. No one suspected anything because there was nothing to suspect. We barely know each other. Julian studied her face in the shadows. What do you want to know? The question caught Emma off guard. What do you mean? You said we barely know each other. What do you want to know about me, Emma? Emma considered the question seriously. Why did you really help me tonight? And don't say it was just because I looked like I needed rescuing. Men like you don't risk their reputations for strangers without a reason. Julian was quiet for a long moment, his blue eyes reflecting the city lights around them. Because I saw something in your eyes when that man was pressuring you. Something I recognized. What did you see? Someone who refuses to be broken, even when the odds are stacked against them. Julian's voice was soft, almost vulnerable. Someone who fights for what they believe in, even when it costs them. Emma felt something shift between them, some connection that went deeper than their practical arrangement. And what do you fight for, Julian? Control, he answered immediately. The ability to protect what matters to me and destroy what threatens it. The intensity in his voice sent both excitement and apprehension through Emma's system. Julian Blackwood was dangerous in ways she was only beginning to understand, but she found herself drawn to that danger like a moth to flame. So what happens now? Emma asked. Julian moved closer. Close enough that Emma could see the silver flecks in his eyes and feel the heat radiating from his body. Now we figure out how to make this work. Are you in, Emma Sinclair? Emma looked up at this mysterious, powerful man who had appeared in her life like something from a fairy tale. Every rational part of her mind was screaming that she should walk away, should go back to her safe, predictable life, and deal with Richard Hawthorne on her own. Instead, she heard herself saying, "I'm in." Julian's smile was slow and devastating. "Then welcome to my world, girlfriend," as he helped her into a sleek black car that probably cost more than Emma's annual salary. She couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just changed completely. Whether it was for better or worse remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. There would be no going back to the woman she'd been before tonight. The city lights blurred past the car windows as they drove through Manhattan, and Emma caught her reflection in the glass. She looked different somehow, more sophisticated, more confident, like she belonged in Julian's world of luxury and power. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it thrilled her in ways she didn't want to examine too closely. Julian Blackwood had just offered her everything she'd ever wanted: protection, opportunity, and a taste of a life she'd only dreamed about. All she had to do was pretend. To love a man who had made it clear that their arrangement was strictly business, how hard could that be? As Emma glanced at Julian's profile in the dim light of the car, his strong jaw and intense eyes focused on something beyond the window, she had a sinking feeling she was about to find out. 3 weeks later, Emma stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of Julian's Manhattan penthouse. Watching the city sprawl endlessly below, the luxury still felt surreal, like she was living inside someone else's dream. Persian rugs worth more than her yearly salary covered polished marble floors, and original paintings by masters she'd only seen in textbooks hung casually on the walls. Julian had insisted she move. And to make their relationship appear genuine, separate bedrooms, he'd assured her. But the arrangement felt more intimate than Emma had anticipated. She'd wake to the smell of expensive coffee brewing, find notes about their evening plans written in Julian's precise handwriting, and catch glimpses of him in casual clothes that made him seem more human and somehow more dangerous. This morning was different, though. Julian stood at his mahogany desk, phone pressed to his ear, his voice sharp with anger. Emma had learned to read his moods over the past weeks. The set of his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes, the way his free hand clenched into a fist told her something was seriously wrong. "I don't care what it costs," Julian was saying, his tone ice cold. "Find out who's been feeding information to my competitors and handle it." Emma moved closer, drawn by the intensity in his voice. Julian looked up as she approached, his expression softening slightly when he saw her. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, then ended the call. "Everything okay?" Emma asked, settling into the leather chair across from his desk. Julian's smile was tight. "Just business. Someone's been leaking details about our upcoming acquisitions. It's cost us 2 major deals this month." Emma studied his face, noting the exhaustion she hadn't seen before. "When's the last time you slept? Really slept, not just a few hours between phone calls. Sleep is a luxury I can't afford right now." Julian moved around the desk, loosening his tie. "Speaking of which, we have the Morrison Foundation Gala tonight. I need you there." Emma felt the familiar flutter of nerves. These events were becoming easier, but she still felt like an imposter among New York's elite. Another night of pretending to be madly in love with you? Something flickered in Julian's eyes at her words. "Is it so difficult? Pretending?" The question caught Emma off guard. Over the past 3 weeks, the line between pretending and reality had become increasingly blurred. Julian brought her flowers without being asked, remembered how she liked her coffee, and had quietly arranged for her favorite books to appear in the penthouse library. Small gestures that felt real, even though she knew they were part of their arrangement. "No," Emma answered honestly. "It's not difficult at all. That's what worries me." Julian moved closer, close enough that Emma could smell his cologne and see the silver flecks in his blue eyes. "What worries you about it?" Emma's heart raced as she met his gaze. "Because sometimes I forget we're acting." For a moment, the air between them crackled with tension. Julian's hand reached up as if to touch her face, then dropped back to his side. "We should get ready," he said, stepping away. "The car arrives at 7. That evening, the Morrison Foundation Gala was held at the Plaza Hotel, and Emma felt more confident navigating the social dynamics. She'd learned to make small talk about art markets, charity work, and cultural events. More importantly, she'd learned to read the subtle power dynamics that governed Julian's world. Julian kept one hand on her, waist as they moved through the crowd, introducing her to business associates and board members. Emma noticed how people's attitudes toward her had shifted over the past weeks. Where once she'd been dismissed as Julian's latest fling, now she was treated with respect, even deference. "You've gotten good at this," Julian murmured in her ear during a lull in conversations. "I had a good teacher," Emma replied, then immediately regretted how intimate that sounded. Their moment was interrupted by a woman approaching them. She was stunning in a calculated way, with platinum blonde hair and a dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Julian," the woman purred, kissing his cheeks. "You look wonderful. And this must be the famous girlfriend everyone's talking about." Julian's entire body tensed. "Natasha, I thought you were in Europe." Change of plans, Natasha's calculating gaze moved to Emma. "I'm Natasha Volkov. Julian and I have history." Emma felt Julian's grip tighten on her waist. There was something predatory about Natasha that set Emma's nerves on edge. "Emma Sinclair," Emma replied politely. "It's nice to meet you, Sinclair," Natasha repeated thoughtfully. "Aren't you the art restorer who's been making waves in authentication circles? I heard about your work on that disputed Monet." Emma was surprised Natasha knew about her professional accomplishments. "Yes. Though that project was months ago, Julian has always had excellent taste in women." Natasha's smile was sharp. Though he usually prefers those who can match his lifestyle more easily, the barb was subtle but clear. Emma felt heat creep up her neck, but before she could respond, Julian stepped forward. "Emma matches me perfectly." Julian's voice was low and dangerous. In every way that matters, Natasha's eyebrows rose at Julian's protective tone. "How romantic." "Well, I should let you two get back to your evening. Julian, we should catch up soon. I'm sure we have much to discuss." After Natasha glided away, Emma turned to Julian. "Another ex." "Business rival," Julian corrected, his jaw tight. "She's been trying to poach my clients for years. She seemed to know me pretty well for a business rival." Julian's expression darkened. "Natasha makes it her business to know everything about her competition, including their weaknesses." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. "Am I your weakness, Julian?" Julian looked down at her, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes before the mask slipped back into place. "You're my girlfriend, remember? Act like it." The orchestra began playing, and Julian led Emma onto the dance floor without another word. But as they moved together, Emma could feel his tension in every line of his body. "Talk to me," Emma said softly. "What's really going on?" Julian spun her expertly before pulling her back into his arms. "The leaks I mentioned this morning? They're not random. Someone's targeting my company specifically, trying to undermine deals I've spent months negotiating. And you think Natasha's involved?" "I think Natasha has always wanted what I have." Julian's grip tightened on her hand. "My success, my connections, my life. She's ruthless enough to use any means necessary to get it." Emma studied his face, seeing past the controlled exterior to the worry underneath. "What can I do to help?" Julian's steps faltered slightly. "What? You heard me? How can I help? I may not understand corporate espionage, but I understand people trying to tear down something you've worked hard to build." Something shifted in Julian's expression. A crack in the wall he kept around his emotions. "You don't need to get involved in this, Emma. It's not your problem. Isn't it, though? If someone's targeting you, and I'm supposedly the woman you care about, doesn't that make me a target too?" Julian stopped dancing altogether, his hands moving to cup Emma's face. "I won't let anyone hurt you. I promise you that." The intensity in his voice, the way he was looking at her like she was something precious and fragile, made Emma's breath catch. This didn't feel like acting anymore. This felt real, dangerous, and completely beyond their carefully negotiated arrangement. Julie and Emma whispered, but whatever she might have said was interrupted by the sound of his phone buzzing urgently. Julian stepped back, checking the message, and his face went pale. "We need to leave. Now. What's wrong?" "Someone broke into my office tonight. They got into my private files." The car ride back to the penthouse was tense and silent. Julian made several phone calls, his voice sharp as he coordinated with security and his legal team. Emma watched the city blur past the windows, her mind racing with questions and concerns. Back at the penthouse, Julian immediately went to his home office, while Emma changed out of her gala dress into comfortable clothes. She found him an hour later, still in his tuxedo, but with his bow tie hanging loose around his neck, staring at multiple computer screens displaying what looked like financial reports and security footage. "Find anything?" Emma asked, setting a cup of coffee beside his elbow. Julian looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "You should be sleeping. This could take all night. So could worrying about you." Emma settled into the chair beside his desk. "Besides, I made coffee. The least you can do is drink it." Julian's smile was tired but genuine. "Thank you. For the coffee and for staying." They worked in comfortable silence for the next hour. Julian reviewing files while Emma researched Natasha Volkov on her laptop. What she found was disturbing. A pattern of hostile takeovers, corporate espionage allegations, and businesses that had mysteriously failed after crossing her path. "Julian," Emma said finally, "I think Natasha's more dangerous than you realize." Julian looked up from his screens. "What did you find?" Emma turned her laptop toward him, showing him the articles she'd compiled. 3 companies in the past 2 years, all had information leaks before major deals fell through. All ended up selling to shell corporations that traced back to her holding company. Julian's expression grew grim as he read, "She's been planning this for a while. The question is, what's her endgame? Just destroying your business, or something more?" Before Julian could answer, the lights in the penthouse went out. Emma's heart stopped as darkness enveloped them. The only illumination came from the city lights streaming through the windows and the glow of Julian's computer screens. "Stay calm." Julian's voice was steady but tense. "It's probably just a power outage." But Emma could hear something in his tone that suggested he didn't believe that any more than she did. Julian's phone buzzed, and in the pale light of the screen, Emma could see his face go white as he read the message. "What is it?" Emma whispered. Julian's voice was deadly quiet when he answered. "Someone's in the building." Emma's blood turned to ice. "What do we do?" Julian was already moving, his phone pressed to his ear as he spoke in rapid, clipped tones to what Emma assumed was his security team. "Penthouse level. 2 minutes ago." "Yes, I'm sure." He grabbed Emma's hand, pulling her toward what looked like a solid wall panel. Emma watched in amazement as Julian pressed his palm against a hidden scanner. The wall slid open to reveal a fully equipped safe room. Inside, Julian commanded, but Emma pulled back. "What about you? I'll be right behind you." Julian's eyes were intense, focused. "Emma, please. I need to know you're safe." Emma stepped into the safe room, and Julian followed, sealing the door behind them. The space was surprisingly comfortable. There were monitors showing security feeds from throughout the building, a small kitchen area, and even a comfortable seating arrangement. "How long have you had this?" Emma asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Since the first time someone tried to kill me," Julian replied matter-of-factly. His attention focused on the security monitors. Emma's heart stopped. "Someone tried to kill you?" Julian glanced at her, noting her pale face. 3 years ago. A business deal gone wrong, or so I thought at the time. Now I'm wondering if Natasha was involved even then." On the monitors, Emma could see dark figures moving through the penthouse. They moved with professional precision, searching methodically through Julian's home office and personal spaces. "They're looking for something specific," Emma observed. Julian nodded grimly. "The question is what? Financial records, business plans, or ... double quotes?" He trailed off, his expression darkening. "Or what? Information about you." Julian turned to face her fully. "Emma, there's something I haven't told you. Something important." Emma's stomach dropped. "What kind of something?" Julian ran his hands through his hair, the careful composure she was used to seeing completely gone. "This arrangement between us, it wasn't as random as I made it seem. I knew who you were before that night at the gallery." Emma felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "What do you mean you knew who I was?" "Your work on art authentication, particularly your research into stolen pieces from World War II. You've been tracking a collection that was looted from Jewish families, trying to return pieces to their rightful owners." Emma nodded slowly. The Rosenberg collection. It's been my passion project for years. But what does that have to do with anything? Julian's expression was grim. Because some of those pieces ended up in private collections owned by people who would prefer they stay hidden. People who would pay significant money to ensure that research never sees the light of day. The pieces began clicking into place in Emma's mind. You think someone's been threatening you because of my research? I think someone's been threatening both of us. The break-ins, the corporate espionage, even Natasha showing up tonight. They're all connected to your work on the Rosenberg collection. Emma felt her legs give out. She sank into one of the chairs. But I haven't published anything yet. My research is incomplete. Incomplete research can be more dangerous than finished work. It leaves room for speculation, for people to wonder what you might discover next. Emma looked up at Julian, understanding dawning. That's why you really helped me that night. Not because I looked like I needed rescuing, but because you needed to keep me close. To protect me, Julian's silence was answer enough. Emma stood up, anger and hurt flooding through her system. So this whole thing, our entire relationship, it's all been about protecting me from some threat I didn't even know existed. Emma, please let me explain. Explain what? How you've been lying to me for weeks. How everything I thought was growing between us was just you playing bodyguard? Julian stepped closer, his eyes intense. Not everything was a lie. How am I supposed to know what was real and what was part of your protection detail? Before Julian could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the safe room. On the monitors, Emma could see the intruders had found the safe room's location and were setting up what looked like cutting equipment. How long will that door hold? Emma asked, her anger temporarily overshadowed by fear. 20 minutes, maybe 30. Julian was moving quickly, gathering equipment from various cabinets. But we're not staying to find out? We're not? Julian pressed a button, and another panel slid open, revealing a narrow stairway. Emergency exit. It leads to the parking garage 3 floors down. As they made their way down the narrow staircase, Emma's mind was racing. Everything she thought she knew about their relationship, about Julian, about her own life, had been turned upside down in the span of an hour. When we get out of here, Emma said quietly, we need to talk. Really talk with no more lies. I know. Julian's voice was heavy with regret. Emma, I'm sorry. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. They reached the parking garage. And Julian led her to a nondescript sedan that looked completely out of place among the luxury cars surrounding it. Backup transportation, Julian explained, starting the engine. Untraceable. As they drove through the empty streets of Manhattan, Emma stared out the window, trying to process everything that had happened. Her quiet life as an art restorer had been completely shattered, replaced by corporate espionage, death threats, and a fake relationship with a man who was apparently willing to risk everything to protect her. Where are we going? Emma asked. Somewhere safe? A place where we can figure out our next move. They drove in silence for another 20 minutes before Julian pulled into the parking lot of a small, unremarkable hotel in Queens. Emma followed him inside, where he registered under what was obviously a false name. The hotel room was basic but clean, a far cry from the luxury of Julian's penthouse. Emma sat on the edge of the bed while Julian made phone calls, coordinating with his security team and trying to assess the extent of the breach. When he finally hung up, Julian sat down across from her, his expression exhausted and vulnerable. The safe room held, he said quietly. They didn't get in, but they took everything from my home office. Computer hard drives, files, even personal photographs, including photographs of us. Julian nodded. They know about our relationship, real or fake. That makes you a target. Emma was quiet for a long moment, absorbing the implications. So what happens now? Do I go into hiding? Change my identity? Give up my research? You don't have to give up anything. Julian's voice was fierce. We're going to find out who's behind this, and we're going to stop them. Emma looked at him, really looked at him, seeing past the billionaire facade to the man underneath. Why? Why risk everything for someone you barely know? Julian was quiet for so long that Emma thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because over the past 3 weeks, You've become the most important thing in my life. What started as protection became something else, something I didn't expect and couldn't control. Emma's breath caught. What are you saying? Julian moved closer, close enough that Emma could see the vulnerability in his blue eyes. I'm saying that somewhere between pretending to love you and actually loving you, the lines got completely blurred. I'm saying that what I feel for you is real, Emma. Terrifyingly, completely real. Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. Julian, I know I've lied to you. I know I've put you in danger just by being near you. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness or your trust. Julian's hands moved to cup her face gently. But I'm asking anyway, because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Emma searched his face, looking for any sign of deception. All she saw was raw honesty. The kind of emotional openness that she knew cost him dearly. I love you too, she whispered. The admission surprising them both. I've been fighting it for weeks, telling myself it was just the situation, the proximity, the pretending. But it's not pretending anymore, is it? No, Julian's voice was rough with emotion. It's not pretending. When he kissed her, it was nothing like the careful, public displays of affection they'd shared at social events. This was desperate, passionate. It's full of weeks of suppressed emotion and the fear that they might not have another chance. Emma melted into his embrace, all her anger and hurt temporarily forgotten in the face of this raw honesty between them. This was what she'd been waiting for. What she'd been hoping for, even when she tried to convince herself their arrangement was purely business. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Julian rested his forehead against hers. We'll figure this out, he promised. All of it. The threats, the research, how to build something real together. I swear to you, Emma, I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. Emma smiled. The first genuine smile she'd felt since their world had been turned upside down. We'll figure it out together. That's what real partners do, right? Real partners, Julian agreed, his smile matching hers. Over the next several hours, they planned their next moves. Julian contacted private investigators to look into Natasha's recent activities, while Emma reached out to her contacts in the art world to warn them about potential threats related to her research. As dawn broke over New York City, Emma found herself curled against Julian's side on the small hotel room bed. Both of them fully clothed, but finally honest with each other about their feelings. What do you think happens next? Emma asked sleepily. Julian's arms tightened around her. Next, we expose whoever's been threatening you. We make sure your research sees the light of day, and those stolen artworks get returned to their rightful owners. And then, and then. Julian's voice was soft with possibility. And then we figure out how to build a life together. A real life, not a pretend one. Emma lifted her head to look at him. Is that what you want? A real life with me? Julian's answer was immediate and certain. It's all I want. 3 months later, Emma stood in the gallery space of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, watching as the last pieces of the Rosenberg collection were installed in their new permanent exhibit. The investigation had led to the arrest of several prominent collectors who had knowingly purchased stolen artwork. And Natasha Volkov's corporate empire had crumbled under the weight of fraud and extortion charges. Julian appeared at her side, looking relaxed in a way she'd never seen during their first weeks together. The constant tension of protecting secrets and maintaining facades had been replaced by the easy comfort of genuine partnership. How does it feel? He asked, slipping his arm around her waist. Emma leaned into his touch, still amazed by how natural it felt. Like justice. Like completion. And us. How do we feel? Emma turned in his arms, studying the face she'd come to love completely. The sharp cheekbones and intense blue eyes were the same, but now she could see past the commanding exterior to the man who played piano late at night, who remembered how she liked her coffee, who had risked everything to protect her research and her dreams. We feel real, she said simply. Julian's smile was warm and genuine. The realest thing I've ever had, as visitors began filtering into the gallery. Admiring the artwork that had finally found its way home after decades of separation from its rightful owners, Emma reflected on how much her life had changed. What had started as a desperate lie to escape unwanted attention had become the greatest truth of her life. She'd found love in the last place she'd expected it, with a man who had challenged every assumption she'd had about wealth, power, and what it meant to truly care for someone. Their relationship had been tested by deception, danger, and the kind of external pressures that destroyed most couples. But they'd emerged stronger, more committed, and completely honest with each other about their feelings. Julian, Emma said as they watched people discover the stories behind each recovered artwork. Yes, thank you for claiming me that night at the gallery. Even if it was for reasons I didn't understand at the time. Julian's eyes softened as he remembered that night. That had changed both their lives. Thank you for being brave enough to let me. And for forgiving me when you learned the truth. I love you, Emma said, the words coming as easily as breathing now. I love you too, Julian replied, and Emma could hear in his voice that he still found it miraculous. This love that had grown from pretense into something stronger than either of them had thought possible. As the sun set over Manhattan, casting golden light through the gallery windows, Emma and Julian stood together, surrounded by art that had survived war, theft, and decades of separation to finally find its way home. Like their own love story, it was proof that sometimes the most beautiful things came from the most unexpected places. And that truth had a way of revealing itself, even when it started as the most necessary of lies.